Hello, welcome to another edition of Detour Live, and we've got Matty Keenan straight off the bat, and as always, Johnny Trevorrow. Johnny, we might as well go straight into bragging about ourselves because, geez, we are tipping some winners on this show, Iffy.
Yes, 3.5 out of 7. That's not bad. That's half and half. Eh?
You're nearly as good as Jumbo Visma, and they're riding the race, but you're just tipping them.
Well, in case you don't believe us, this is what we said on yesterday's show.
But I've got a real sneaky feeling that this race is going to blow apart in the side winds, and someone's going to crack, and then the pressure's going to come on. So if that's the case, I'm going to go for Wout van Aert.
I would have to agree. I think he's the tip because he's going to have a solid team of engines around him, and you're going to need that. You're going to need every help you can get if those winds kick up. So I think he was around $5.50, so that's not too bad value. So, Keenan, do you need help with special comments throughout the coverage tonight? Because me and Iffy, if you need to phone us in, we're available, mate.
Dan, see this? This is from Christoph and Macca. It's for the Australian Podcast Awards for 2019. And their show, the Cycling Central Zwift show, they won 2019. What I'll do is it's going to be difficult to have award ceremonies in 2020. Obviously, you guys are going to take out the title. So I'll just get a replica of this for you, and I'll change it to 2020, and I'll put it the Detour Podcast. You've nailed it. Well played.
Well done. Okay.
Well, there you go.
We'll take it.
How good is that? Now, we have got a jam-packed show tonight. We've got Will Walker, who's about to join us. We've got Matt White, and we're going to be dialing into David Millar, who's over in the UK commentating for ITV. So I thought, we'll bring Will straight in off the bat as well. We've got a cast of thousands today. It's fantastic. Dr. Will, can you hear us? Oh, no.
Yeah,
please.
hi, Dan. I'm not sure if this is any good.
It looks good but in the dark, but that's okay, mate.
Yeah, you look a bit seedy, but we'll run with it. How are you finding the Tour de France so far, mate?
Turn some lights on.
Yeah, look, really good. I'm so sorry, my internet connection, I thought it would be good enough, but it's not sounding very good. But can you hear me well?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, mate.
We can.
Yep.
Now, Iffy, we wanted to bring Will on to talk about the likes of Pogacar, who's in his second Grand Tour, and he's only, 21 years, Kano?
His 22nd birthday is the day after the Tour finishes. And Will, your best place certainly amongst us and amongst most Australians to talk about riding a Grand Tour at such a young age. And we talk about it in commentary, about the risk of riding a guy so young, deep into a Tour and chasing the general classification. And now you've got the experience of being a doctor as well. What do you see as the risk for a guy so young, who's already finished third in a 3-week race, really pushing himself to the edge in an event like this?
Will, you won't believe it. He's dropped off. We're off to an absolute cracker, guys.
Dan, I saw that there was an issue there, and I saw that it had frozen, so I tried to elongate the question to give you a chance.
It was such a good question too.
Just to excuse poor Will, he's living out at Brimley, which is sort of just out the back between Torquay and Barwon Heads. Very bad internet. And he said if he steps outside, it should be okay. I guess he was wrong.
Well, you're in the guts of Geelong, and your internet's woeful. So I don't know if that makes a difference. So anyway, all right, let's talk about last night's stage. Keenan, it absolutely blew to bits. What was it like in the commentary box?
It was the best day of commentary this year by a country mile. It was absolutely sensational. Like you guys, I expected it to blow apart, but I expected it to blow apart in the last 30 or 40 Ks, where we saw that second split and the likes of Richie Port and Volker Mollema and Tadej Pogacar lose some time. That first move by Bora Hansgrohe, that was phenomenal. There's an Australian guy called Gazzetto Gruppetto. I can't quite remember his Twitter account. He did this little cartoon, and it was somebody saying to Daniel Loss, I bet you can't do a 150-kilometre lead-out. And he turns around on the next person with a beer and says, hold this. Like, it was unbelievable, the Bora Hansgrohe team on the front from the start. Then when they split it, John, they got rid of some of those sprinters. I thought, they'll ease up at some stage. They never eased up. It was exceptional.
Yeah. Brilliant day.
What does this mean moving forward, Keno? Like you had Carapaz lost a bit of time.
He was unlucky.
Yeah,
he had a puncher. He was in the front group. He was unlucky. Yeah.
And
So
Richie Port.
Yeah. Mollema. What was interesting, might get your response to this in a moment, John. Trek Segafredo, they had Balka Mollema and Richie Port, both guys who finished top 10 in the Tour in the past, in the second group. And they let Jasper Stuyven stay in the front group from that team, and he sprinted into 5th place. I'll let you talk about that in a moment. One of the comments that came from Tadej Pogacar was, it's only 1 minute and 21 seconds. That's not much. Cadel Evans would love 1 minute and 21 seconds from the Tour de France of 2007 and 2008 because he lost both of those tours by less than a minute. You go back to the 2017 Tour de France, Romain Bardet stayed on the podium in 3rd place by 1 second. Those time gaps that we saw yesterday, they could be bigger than the time gaps we see in the mountains.
Now we've got Will back. It looks like you've camped out in the car, mate. How's the reception now?
Yeah, look, I'm so sorry. I had the world's best reception, and I think just the 1 second I decided to come on board, it was shocking. So really sorry.
Did you hear Matty's amazing question, or does he have to repeat it?
Look, I don't think he has to repeat it. I heard about 3 key words, and I know what he was going to ask. So I think, is it too early for Pogacar to be doing Grand Tours? And I've been following this kid since I think he won the Tour de l'Avenir in 2018. And he looks like the real deal. And that's, with the likes of Bernal alongside him and Evenepoel. I think in any other team, he probably wouldn't be doing the Tour right now, but just because of the probably, fewer results from the UAE team, he's being thrust into the deep end, and he did the Vuelta and came 3rd overall last year as a 20-year-old. I mean, that's pretty unheard of in itself. And I think it probably is too early. He's obviously, his body's up to it. I guess in the perfect world, he could start riding Grand Tours at 22 or 23, or at least do the first one without having the pressure of having to ride for GC.
I was going to ask a question to you, Will, because we're not going to go into the whole Will Walker story here. People can go back and look at the podcast we did just a week ago and get all of that information. But you were thrust into a Grand Tour at only 20 years of age. You were Australian champion at 19, World Under 23 silver medalist at 19. Rabobank signed you up. Suddenly you're in the Vuelta at 20. You rode the Giro only a few months later. Do you reckon that had something to do with your heart challenges, palpitations and everything that happened later? Do you think that was anything to do with it?
Yeah, like I said to you in the podcast we did, John, I think it could definitely have been one of those factors. If I started riding Grand Tours later or became pro later on, I think that definitely could have been a different career. But it's one of those things you just don't know unless you live 2 separate lives and have a go at doing both. I think I really thought this new generation of riders were getting managed a little bit better, but all of a sudden we're seeing guys turn pro straight out of juniors again, and that's going right back to how Filippo Pozzato turned pro way back in probably 1998 or something, straight out of juniors. And I thought pro cycling might have evolved from that, but it just goes to show when a few teams don't have the results and they've got this future champion on their hands, which they might not necessarily have under contract when he is 24, they probably want to just get the results out of him now. I mean, it's one of those hard ones that he's probably on a 2 or 3 year contract. And
then you have Egan Bernal, who won the Tour last year. He's the youngest winner since 1909. He comes into the race as the defending champion at 23. And we've spoken about a lot this year about Remco Evenepoel, who's 20 years of age. He's won every tour that he's started. They've been 1 week tours. And then last year, Tadej Pogacar finishing on the podium at the Vuelta. It's, as you know, it's hard to hold somebody back that's at that age and they're ready to win. And Bernal's already got a Grand Tour victory, the Tour de France, underneath his wheels.
Yeah, it's just absolutely incredible, isn't it? I mean, wouldn't it be good to have seen a Tour de France with Evenepoel in it this year anyway. I mean, I know he's
Yes.
even younger than those two, but God, that guy looks like he's the world's, next Eddie Merckx, or maybe even better.
Yeah, he says, don't say I'm the next anything else. I'm the first Remco Evenepoel, and I totally agree with that. You can't compare him to anybody else. And you probably suffered a bit from that as well, the following in the shadows of particularly being compared to Cadel Evans. Did you find that a difficult experience? People saying, oh, this is Will Walker, he's going to be the next Cadel Evans.
Yeah, I didn't really struggle with that. I mean, it's a pretty good person to be called, following in his footsteps. I can't really fault that at all. But yeah, I don't think that's a bad pressure to have, and I think it just goes to show how much confidence Remco Evenepoel has that he thinks, he's going to do it better again, or just differently at least than Eddie Merckx.
Yeah, he's certainly going to have to try and do it differently.
Just to give viewers an insight, Will, what effect did it have on your body after the Vuelta? We know you had problems with the heart, but how do you actually feel at a young age when you complete that Grand Tour? How long did you need to recover?
Yeah, look, it's bloody exhausting. All I remember in that last week, we were staying at a hotel without a lift, and I was just on the second floor, and I just couldn't think for the life of me how I'd get from dinner at night time up to the second floor. It really is taxing, and I know you still end up doing, climbs in the third week of the Grand Tours, and there are days with 5,000 ascending meters, but you just look at the bottom of the first climb and you just think, I don't even know how I'm going to make it to the top. I think these younger guys, I mean, they're also doing GC. So on the one hand, they probably will get through a Grand Tour a little bit more easily just because, they're so strong. But on the other hand, every single day they're pushing and fighting to be in the front and then going, completely to the max up a hill. It takes a lot. So it can take, months or 6 months to fully recover from a Grand Tour, I think.
And it's important. John. It's important to remember that everybody has a different path as well. Not everybody matures at the same time. Geraint Thomas, when he rode his first tour, he was really young. He was, I think, 21. He was the youngest in the race. It was in 2007, and he finished second last in 2007. In 2018, he won the race. How the statistical nerd in me, you've got no idea how much the statistical nerd in me wishes he finished last in 2007 so we could have that story. But everybody has a different pathway.
We've got a question from Stuart McIntosh. He says, so what are we saying here? Doing Grand Tour at a young age has potential health risks as you get older. Is that what we're saying?
I don't know the answer.
Yeah.
I mean, can I jump in here? I think no one can really know. I think if you were looking at maturing any young rider, and if you had them under contract 15 years, you'd probably let them avoid the Grand Tours for a couple of years. Let them just ease into their first one and not necessarily go for GC, and then start to let them rip. With cycling the way it is, you don't know what the future holds, and sometimes when you've got a great rider like these guys, you just got to let them rip and take the wins when they're young, and you're just hoping that their body keeps maturing through the years and can take all of those pressures.
One thing UAE have done is they've got Pogacar on a 5-year contract. They know what they've got.
But what I was just going to say, the one thing they're doing much better now is they are managing them better. Okay, they might be I think it's too young to be putting him to Grand Tours at 20, but the rest of the time they're managing him. Back in your day, Will, as you know, they just kept making you race. They didn't let you recover. At a young age, you need a lot of recovery time. But I've been really watching Pogacar probably more than anyone else. And other than that, all the stuff up yesterday, he has looked so comfortable. When I'm looking at when the pressure's on, he's just picking his nose, as they say. He hasn't looked under pressure. I think, personally, this is going to affect him in that I think he'll still get on the podium. I really do. But it'll probably for second or third, maybe more likely third, whereas he would have given Roglic a real run for his money. But now that is the difference. He won't get that time back on Roglic, I don't think.
Yeah, I think it looks fantastic. But I want to pick you up on your point, John. I think you made a good point. And the difference here, Will, I think with the generation now is they're doing a Grand Tour, but they're doing a lot less other racing. So the teams are managing them better. So they're letting them recover. And perhaps when you were racing, it was, okay, well, the roster's empty. We need you, Will. Sorry, I know you're tired, but you've got to go and race.
Yeah, that did happen quite a lot.
We've got another fan question. Samantha Ince wants to know, do you think the teams are riding harder because there's that COVID uncertainty?
I do.
It's a good question.
Yeah, I do.
And what's the situation, Keno? If the race has to stop at some point, whoever's leading, winner chicken dinner. Is that how it's going to work?
No, we don't know. I've asked this question directly to ASO, and I haven't had a clear answer back. At what point do you declare the winner of the race if the race has to stop early? It is totally unknown at this stage. And the UCI president, David Millar, he was asked that question by Andrew Hood, the American journalist, and he said, the winner will be declared in Paris. What if we don't make it to Paris? The Tour will finish in Paris.
Yeah,
All right.
it's funny.
You need a plan B.
Yeah, well, evidently they're not setting out a plan B. They're doing it down Andrews. They're not going to tell us what it is. But
no, they did a virtual tour, Keenan, with Zwift. Maybe
So
they all get on the trainers.
Stages on Zwift, you think there?
But I just disagree slightly. I don't think they're racing this thinking about the race being stopped, because every race that's been on since we started at the beginning of August has been fantastic. And matter of fact, this tour started that way. Then we had a couple of days which were really disappointing, but yesterday it was all, it came to life big time. I think they're racing this because they're like kids finally let out of the schoolyard. They wanting to go, and I think that's what we're seeing.
And
I don't think it's COVID.
I think the COVID situation for the whole year has affected every race in that there are rare opportunities to race, so they're more desperate. Will, putting your racing hat back on, take us to Will Walker, the 22-year-old. If you'd been starved of racing for 6 months and you were given the opportunity to go and ride any small race, let alone the biggest race in the world, its significance surely elevates.
Yeah, Matt, I'm against you on this one. I'm with John. I think the racing has been a little bit on the back foot at this tour. I mean, remember back in the day, any opportunity, even those middle mountain stages, you had the guys that were, between 5th and 10th, most, on the GC or the next best GC contenders. They would attack and they would keep attacking to try and gain back a minute. Some of the most recent stages, besides obviously yesterday with the crosswinds, I feel like the racing has been just normal, if not as reserved as some future past years. But I think you're right. I mean, you start people are racing and you are going to see them, lash out and really train hard and race hard. But I probably would have liked to see a little bit more aggression with some of the tactics of some of the teams.
So did I on the stage to Brevard. That was a commentary challenge, I can tell you. I think overall the lack of racing, particularly in the lead-up races to this, have made people value the opportunity to race more. And there's been more at stake because of the lack of racing. And Scott Davis he's right. There's testing on Monday on rest day.
So does that mean what have they been doing with the testing in this first week?
I haven't heard of any testing in the first week. On the rest day, they do testing. If there's 2 people on the team that test positive, the team's out.
Ooh.
But they try and turn the tests around really quickly to do a follow-up test to make sure it's not a false positive.
This is a good point from Ryan McMillan. Is the issue not inherent in pro sports? We've seen examples in the AFL as well where the body is pushed to its limits. There's no greater example of human endurance than the Tour, I don't believe. So in terms of pushing your body to the limits, I mean, does it get any harder than a Grand Tour?
No, well, you see athletes do it all the time. There was a Australian triathlete, I can't remember his name, from Warrandyte he was from, and he was in the Hawaiian Ironman. He was somewhere close to finish inside the top 10, and he collapsed within 200 meters of the finish line at the Hawaiian Ironman, and he could not finish. And he lost half of his small intestine as a result. Will be able to give us the medical rationale behind it, but he completely depleted himself in the space of one day at the Hawaiian Ironman.
Yeah, I think you're completely right. And I think they've done some research as well, looking at the heart function at the end of those Ironman, and there's something like a rise in the cardiac enzymes that shows that people have minor heart attacks. Now, that's not to say that in the long term, that's necessarily going to be bad. And I think doing any level of sport, probably sub-extreme sport, is extremely healthy for you. But there are these, between Ironman and the Tour de France and the Vuelta a España and the Giro, they're extremely, extremely hard on your body. And, I don't envy those athletes out there at the moment, but I think the Tour de France really is the most grueling because it's just day after day, and it's mental as well. You've got your days where your legs don't respond, and you have to hold that peloton, because if you're out the back, you're out of the time limit, and that's such a disappointing thing for a cyclist.
I know Keno's got to go. I just wanted to ask one question to both of you. With today's stage is the first real mountain stage in the Pyrenees, two Cat 1s and a horse category. I think this will be the first day that the GC riders actually test themselves out. What do you guys think?
Will?
Yeah, look, I'm with you on that, John. I think they've been pretty reserved till now. I think it's been a really good recent few days for Jumbo, just because they've been able to take the pressure off themselves and let Sky start to do some work and let Orica do some work. Green Edge. So I think this is going to be it, and I really hope they start to light it up. And I'd like to see Tom Dumoulin try and go early on some of those climbs and really test the other teams. And I'd like to see some of the guys that aren't quite the favourites now really light things up and try and take the race in hand and see how Jumbo-Visma with Roglic respond. And Sky's a real unknown entity at the moment. And even Bernal's form, he looks like he's not quite as good as last year, but it's still early days.
And I'm looking forward to seeing how the guys who lost time yesterday, Mikel Landa, Richie Porte, Bauke Mollema, Esteban Chavez, Tadej Pogacar, how they respond today. Dan, a graphic popped
before
up
you go,
before.
yeah,
I'm keen to answer that.
From Andrew Matthew.
Have I found commentating remotely? I've loved it. It's
and
great.
Do you think it's going to be common? Do you think it's going to be the way forward? Like, have you shot yourself in the foot for future trips to France?
No, I haven't, because I'm here working for SBS. This is the first time I've worked on the tour for SBS. I normally work on the tour for ASO and do the international feed. And I have a contract with ASO that runs through to the end of 2022. I hope it goes beyond that as well. So I'll be back on the ground next year with Robbie commentating on the tour. It'll come into Australia on SBS, but we'll get to commentate then as well to New Zealand, South Africa, Canada, on to NBC Gold in the US and so on. So I will keep doing it in that format. I think it might change the way we do some of the other races that we only do for SBS. There might be less trips up to Sydney to do it from the studio there. And Dave McKenzie and I, for example, will stay in Melbourne and do it from the studio here. But this has been a fantastic tour for me because I've been able to stay at home, hang out with the kids. And tomorrow, my daughter's 10, my son is 8. Tomorrow will be my first Father's Day with my kids, and I'm looking forward to it.
Fantastic, mate. Hopefully they've got you a deluxe pair of socks and jocks.
I know part of what I'm getting, and we're having a big sushi a Japanese banquet's been delivered from a Japanese restaurant in Fairfield, and my son came bursting in this morning to tell me what I was getting for Father's Day until he got wrestled to the ground by his sister.
Now I've just got a message here from Mark Mentha, who came on the tour a couple of years ago to tell us that Chris Lee was the guy's name in Hawaii Ironman, and they cut 60 feet out of his intestine.
Oh.
Yeah, so I knew the story, but I couldn't remember Chris's name, and I've met Chris a couple of times. Well done, Mark. Thank you.
Well, we've got to let you go, Keenan. You've got a job to do, mate. So thanks for coming on the show, and we'll touch base with you again soon. Good luck.
Good to see you all. See you, Will.
See you, mate.
See you,
Thanks,
mate.
Right. That was interesting insights from Keno. Always a pleasure to hear from him. What else do you want to ask Will while we've got him, Johnny?
Well, I had a whole stack of questions lined up for Will. They're all to do with getting thrust into it as a youngster. So just tell us a little bit about your riding the Vuelta in your first year as a pro.
Yeah, okay. Well, I did it pretty much. I did the Tour de l'Avenir when I was about 18 or 19, the same as Pogacar. I'm not sure how my pronunciation's going there. I'm sorry. And then the year after, I did the Tour of Spain like he did. So extremely young, and that was a real shock. I mean, back in those days, there were lots of Spanish teams, and they were riding particularly fast. At the start, I was pretty lucky because we did have Denis Menchov on the team, and he was, he asked for me to be in the team just in case he needed extra support for GC. And then all of a sudden he lined up and, he wasn't going very well. So I'm not sure what was going on there, but I think I was pretty lucky that I didn't have to start riding on the front. The first 10 or 12 or 13 days, they start to go really well. I think that's what any young rider or most riders can start to handle before their legs start to get so heavy. It feels like they're made out of cement. And it's not just that, it's just this overwhelming lethargy that I think most people probably know it. I mean, if you're new into cycling and you decide to do your first 200-kilometer ride and you've only done 100 kilometers before it, and you then sit on the couch after the ride and you realize you can't move anywhere, it's like doing that, but then you've still got another week to go in the race. And it's just, stage after stage after stage. And I just remember, I think I was telling you, John, the story of, a couple of days to go, and we, racing the first 15K, 60K an hour, we hit this 15 or 20 kilometer hill, and as soon as I could see the hill, I was dropped by myself, mind you. I was just so exhausted. Just the thought of doing a hill was just too much. And I pretty much had to do my own time trial just to crest the hill, which wasn't even, people weren't racing, completely then, just to crest the hill 6 or 7 minutes behind the leaders. And I pretty much had to time trial over the top and try and catch up to the gruppetto. And then, we ended up swapping off all the way to the finish pretty much just to come in 25 minutes behind the leaders. So it was a real eye-opener for how much better pros were than I was at that stage. And I was just cooked. And I was telling you about that story to do with our director at the time as well. And he was the guy that, I've forgotten his name now, that finished second and won the Tour de France. Joop Zoetemelk.
He won the Zoetemelk. Yeah. Joop Zoetemelk. Yeah.
Yeah, and he looked at me on that hill, and he just said, "Put it in the big chain ring and catch up to everybody." And I nearly fell off my chair, off my saddle at least.
Do you find it's that extra level of hardness, being that you are from Australia when you're that young and you go over to Europe and you find a lot of the European riders, they've got the support network around them. They've got the friends, the family. Whereas when you're an Aussie and you're going through really tough moments, do you find that makes it that extra bit more difficult?
Yeah, I think you're bang on the money there. To make it as an Aussie pro in Europe, it's not just about having the engine, and we've seen that over the last few years. Locally, there's some really good teams, and the directors and all of the people in Melbourne and Australia, and we'll say, oh, this guy's going to be the next big thing, but that's only one component. The next component is setting your life up in Europe and being able to be strong without the support of your family and friends. And being, going through a race and you're feeling the highs of a race, and then you've got a week or two at home alone where you probably don't know anybody in a village. And I know that's started to improve a lot now, and that Aussie team base in Girona is extremely good for that. But that's probably why Green Edge was so successful for so many years with the Aussies, and they probably brought that culture to a European team, and it rubbed off, I suppose, on the Europeans and the people that weren't from Australia racing on that. So it's one of those things that's not talked about, but the Aussie mentality is great. And you've got the guys like Stuart O'Grady. They're as hard as nuts. I mean, it could be raining outside and the world's worst day and then hailing, and he'd just be up for anything. So
and then it must have been extremely difficult when you were told for the first time that you couldn't race again. How did you go when you're forced into retirement with identity? Because, you've gone from, everything to be a bike rider, but then you're thrust into the real world. That must have been a really tough transition for you.
Yeah, Dan, it's still tough today. I have to admit, even today it was Saturday and I decided to go into the hospital to try and keep learning. But I rode my bike in, it's just 20k, and I was a little bit on the slow side. Every now and again, especially when the tour's on, and I'm looking at the results in the morning and watching the sprint finishes, and Jumbo Visma is the team that I used to ride for, and the directors are the same, and some of the guys were still my teammates way back, 10, 12, 14 years ago, whenever it was I was on the team, 15 years ago. So I still have moments where, God, I would give anything to ride free as a professional cyclist, probably for the rest of my life. For me, it's just the pinnacle, and I'm trying to recreate myself in medicine and do something I love. And I'm extremely happy. But does it compare to being a pro cyclist? I mean, it's pretty easy answer. No way. And it's never going to. And being an athlete is great, and being a pro cyclist is really just the pinnacle of life, in my opinion. So, as painful as it is getting through a Grand Tour, the elation that you feel when you're finishing that, Col de Galibier on the 14th stage or the 15th stage, and you've got all of the fans there, and you cross the line, it's just the best feeling ever.
Yeah, it's been great, mate. Well, I'll tell you what I'll do, Will. You're just out of Geelong in Brimley. We'll catch up for a ride very soon, and I can promise you'll be a winner that day. Okay?
That's going to mean more than finishing the Vuelta, mate, for sure. Well, all the best, Will. Thanks for coming on and giving us those insights, mate. It's been fantastic, and we'll definitely have to catch up soon, mate.
Yeah, thanks very much. And I really sincerely apologise for the terrible internet. I thought I had it sorted.
That's every night on this show. I do
it every night, mate, so it's fine.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
Good on you, Will.
See you later,
mate.
Keep it going.
Cheers, mate.
Bye, mate. Bye.
Fantastic insights from Will there. It does make you stop and think that these guys, as much as you see them on TV and they're battling each other up the hills, they're still people, and they still got their own sort of battles on and off the bike. And I think if you go back, if anyone watching this and you want to hear the full interview, that was so inspiring to hear his story, particularly when, like, we could have talked about the incident at the Nationals, but you saw in your interview, John, that emotion's still so raw for him to recount what happened that day.
Yeah, very much so. So I would encourage anyone to go into the Detour files and listen to that interview. Well, actually, you can watch it now on the podcast and see his reaction. It's a fantastic interview. Now, I think we should be having a little talk to Whitey soon, because you're going to have your mate David Millar coming up.
Dave Millar has told me he's ready to go in about 15 minutes. So this is our chat with Sports Director Matt White from earlier today. It's that time again for Sports Director Matthew White. Now, Whitey, you're in Toulouse. A lot of one-way streets there. And John, you were never one to obey road rules when you were in France. Often going up the wrong way in Toulouse.
We used to always stay at the Crown Plaza, a great little spot with all some wonderful restaurants around the back. I miss that. Yep.
and Whitey, the big photo with all the staff from yesterday's hotel, they missed it.
Yeah, it was a travesty, mate. There was a little bit of miscommunication between the staff that I spoke to and them arriving at the bus to get the photo with the yellow jersey. And it was a failure on their behalf. They came late, and we had to get out of there.
Jeez, could you imagine the fights after that? They're all sit there, and the yellow jersey's gone. Like, you'd be absolutely spewing. But yesterday's stage, mate, you knew there was going to be crosswinds, but it still didn't shy away from the fact it was absolute carnage. Pretty good to survive another day in yellow.
Yeah, and look, I'm not sure how much the television picked up, but where the damage was really done was from kilometre zero. There was a climb. We went directly uphill, straight into another climb, and then that's when Bora put the smack down, and that's where the splits happened. It wasn't due to the crosswinds, the initial splits. So half the bunch was already gone in the first 10 kilometres. So it was pretty clear for Bora that they wanted to isolate Caleb, Nizzolo, Christoph, Viviani, all those guys, and they did a very good job. And they went on with it for a long time. And it wasn't until 30k from the finish that Ineos just ripped it through a couple of roundabouts into town, and there was a little bit of wind, a little bit of side wind, not too much at that time, but it was just more the speed that they went through those roundabouts, and someone lost the wheel, that turned into 5 meters, into 10 meters, and it just went from there. And because there was, it was basically a group of 80, it was split pretty much in half. There was teammates on both ends of the split. There was a little bit of disharmony in the second group, and the first group was able to ride away into the sunset.
Now, in a stage like that, when they're on the front, they're just gassing it. Even though Yatesy was safe, are you still crossing your fingers like, please don't have a mechanical, because you saw Carapaz? And then the other question is, what's the go of disc brakes? Because I'm seeing mechanics doing these changes with drill bits and that. It looks like a bloody nightmare.
Yeah, so look, you got to stay pretty calm in those situations. Even if we had, you saw with Carapaz, even if we had one or two people with him. Actually, I preferred this, as funny as it sounds, when there was a split like that, then Yatesy had to look after himself, sure, but it was a good sized group. And it wasn't really, really side winds. It was a cross tail, so it was fast, and it was on big roads, so there wasn't enough. It was not like he was going to be put off the road. That 10 guys could squeeze through, and the other ones would be in trouble. It was massive roads. So what the advantage was that out of that front group of 40, they were just happy to stay away from the group behind. So they never propped or started to attack each other. So Yatesy was actually safe in that group, whereas the second group, that we knew they would chase them all the way to the line because there were some key guys missed out. But like you said, Carapaz punctured, and they actually sent Castelrejo back for him. So even if Adam had punctured and we had someone there and waited, these days with the bike change, you've either got to do a bike change, it's relatively quick, or if you're doing the wheel change with the disc brakes, the mechanics have to use a tool like the same with Formula One, in and out, take the skewer out, pop the wheel in. So the wheel changes now are definitely slower. And, when you're 10, 12 kilometres from the finish in cross tailwind, it wouldn't have mattered if we've had 5 people back there. They barraged Carapaz straight away. And he had a teammate, and he ended up getting caught by the group behind in the last 5K. So, yeah, it was a little bit stressful, but at the end of the day, being stressed doesn't change the fact where Adam was. He was in good position. He knows how to ride crosswinds, rotating in that group, and he was never in any danger of losing time in the final yesterday.
Pretty cool. Cat. Oh, Matt White. I know in stages like that, I'd be panicking because do you want to give people an insight when they do split, how it works with the team cars and things like that?
Well, that's the problem, of course. They've got one car up there, and the other car is probably a fair way back. So when it splits, they, of course, Matty would have gone straight up with behind Yatesy. Once the gap got to over a minute, but while it was split, while it was still less than a minute, that gap, which it was for a long time, Whitey wasn't allowed in there. So only the yellow Mavic service course cars are allowed to do the changes, and they never do it as well. So that's why Carapaz was never going to get back on. And if Yatesy had a puncture at that time, he would have been back in the second group as well.
All right, here's the second part of our chat with Matt White.
I just noticed, Whitey, that the old days when you do a quick bike change like that, just say, for instance, in that situation with Yatesy had he punctured, you'd be able to just quickly turn to the back of the convoy with the car, let him sit on. They're not letting any of that happen this year.
No, they're not. And look, at the end of the day, as long as that's the same for everyone, I haven't got a problem with that either. When you are in the final in cross tailwinds, there should be barrages, and Carapaz had no chance of coming back, nor anyone would have if they'd punctured in that final there because of the cross tailwind. So look, it's as long as it's the same for everyone. But sometimes at certain races, the commentators do let the convoy in there, and it makes it a hell of a lot easier for a guy to come back late. This is bad luck for Carapaz, and you need a little bit of luck at times.
Sorry, mate. I was going to say another great performance from Wout van Aert. Did he ever just stop surprising you?
Oh, look, if he wins today, I'll be pretty surprised. He's a big unit. He's a big unit, but he's class, mate. He's world cyclocross champion. He's very, very versatile rider. And for the people, television probably doesn't show, but he's a big boy. Like he's a muscly guy. Puts out a hell of a lot of power. So a stage like yesterday, it certainly doesn't surprise me. But some of the victories he's had, he time trials well, short climbs, he's all over it. He's a very similar type of rider to Matteo van der Poel. Why? Because they come from the same background, cyclocross, and they're both that sort of size frame guys. 75, 76 kilograms, big power units. But he's one versatile character, that's for sure.
Now, we saw Yatesy on the backstage pass. He was very relaxed after the finish. Here's a quick grab from Yatesy.
Full gas, start to finish. Everyone wanted the rest day, apart from Bora. So, no rest day for us.
Now, Yatesy and even his brother Simon, they appear as though if you take out all the external pressure and keep it really simple, so you've come into this tour, we're going for stages, and the jersey's a bit of a bonus. This is all really playing into his hands. And you had the COVID restrictions, there's less fans. I saw images like his family's there. He just seems like in a really good spot at the moment, Whitey.
Yeah, no, he is. He is. At the end of the day, he's got nothing to lose besides the yellow jersey. But he's in a good place. He's got good legs. And I think he's going to go good today on the last climb on the Pure Sword. And look, if we lose the jersey today, so be it. We go back to our original plan and go back after targeting stages. But we're going to roll with it as long as we can. And who knows, mate? 2016, we did the same thing, and it took us pretty far.
You've got 2 monster days in the Pyrenees, but both of them, neither of them have got actually hilltop finish, which will suit Adam as far as keeping that short time base. He's just got to hang on, doesn't he?
Yeah, well, we're going to let the break go today, and he's just got to hang on because today the Pure Sword is right near the finish, and it is lightning fast downhill. So basically, where you're going to go, it might as well be hilltop finish because if you've lost more than 10 or 15 seconds on the top of the Pure Sword, you're not coming back. It's a lightning fast descent, and it'll be a race to the top. What we want is that break to go, take the time bonuses at the top of the Cat 1 and even the finish. So if we can do that, and you can hold the wheel with Roglic, then we could be still in yellow in 9 or 10 hours time.
And what are you expecting from guys like Pogacar after losing time yesterday? And given that he's young, do you reckon he'll be fired up and he'll try something today?
Yeah, look, I really don't expect too much from any key guys until the Pure Sword. I think it's just too far. And knowing what's in the back end of this race, it probably wouldn't be so wise to attack us, attack Jumbo before the Pure Sword because you can risk a lot. And I think you won't see too much until the final climb of the day, and then we can actually see who the best climbers are. Because I said it might not be a hilltop finish, but your position over the top of the Pure Sword would be just as important if the finish line was there.
Good stuff, mate. Well, you got anything else to add, Iffy, or you good?
No, that's good. All good.
All right. Well, all the best today, mate, and hopefully it's another day in yellow, and it's a good one for you guys.
Yeah, thanks very much, guys.
Matthew White there, always great insights, Iffy. It's come to that time of the show where we should send a plug out to the sponsors. Johnny, this is where you really shine, mate. Lexus of Blackburn and that famous photo.
Yes, and Mark.
I think that's the last time.
Yeah, okay. We've got some new ones to come up. But Mark, you're right. He hasn't got any socks on. Yes, the Moore family, Andrew and Sarah, wonderful people. So when this all settles down and you need that new car, get out to Lexus of Blackburn. They'll look after you. And great partners in cycling. And, of course, the Mitchelton Hotel at Mitchelton Winery in the Gambie on the banks of the beautiful Goulburn River. Hey, as soon as this lockdown is unlocked, it'd be the first place I'd be going for a holiday.
You're on a roll, mate. Time to keep it going. Who we got?
We got Let's Go Motorhomes. Our mate Andrew in there. He loves this section. We've got the special going at the moment, which
Yes,
should
that's
be
right.
picking up. Where is it? The Let's Go Early Bird Special. Book 90 days in advance.
90.
And get 90. Got it right. And 5% discount.
That's right. And a quick word from our other sponsors, Bike Exchange.
We are the world's #1 bike marketplace with over 900 brands, where buyers and sellers are brought together in a place where a bike is never just a bike. Bike Exchange, where the world buys, sells, learns, and rides.
Now, as we said, we've got David Millar, who's not far away from joining us. Now, I was going to queue up a flashback for the Detour DeLorean segment, but I'm looking at my screen here and I don't think I've uploaded it into the system, which is a bit of a shame. I've done an iffy and I haven't actually prepared the videos properly. But what I was going to show is because we've put the Rolodex out or we've scrolled through it and we've tried to find contacts who'd be interesting to have on the show. And Swain Tuff has agreed to come on the show tomorrow. Now, he is one of the great characters in cycling iffy. Like, if anyone saw All for One, some of his philosophies on life are just fantastic. Like, he's unlike anyone's story I've ever heard, because he wasn't your traditional, like we were talking to Will early, grows up, all your family are into cycling. They race, junior worlds, all these sort of things. He's not like that. He literally went around the world with all his possessions. This is a famous photo. He had his dog on the back and he rode from Canada to California. I think it took him 3 months or something. And he's like the Bear Grylls of cycling. And there's stories where he took on a wolf, I think. Like, he was in the woods and this wolf come at him at his camp. And he reckons he found like an old ice hockey puck, like a, what do they call them? Like a stick. And that's what saved him from the wolf. Like, he took it head on. And I remember just sitting in the back of the bus and you literally listen to Swaino tell these stories for hours and you just mesmerized. Like, even when he was 15, like, he was looking for a job and his dad put him out on like a work site and he was like hammering nails and stuff. And he was by himself and he put his foot through it and, busted his foot. And then his dad was like, well, I can't work. You can't work on the site. Like, you've injured yourself the first day. So he just ended up hitchhiking, jumped on, in those movies where you see they jump on the trains and just go coast to coast. Did that with a mate, grabbed a bike, was just cycling all day. He said, like, that was some of the happiest moments of his life. It's going to be a fascinating chat. Now, people want to know, before we get to Dave Millar, what is your predictions for the stage, Johnny? This is a big moment because a lot of people on the back of yesterday, they're going to want what the Oracle thinks.
Well, I think a breakaway will go, and I think it might even get enough time to even stay away from the stage. But you can throw a whole stack of names up in the air. Who knows who's going to get in the breakaway? So I'm not even going to go there. So I'm going to go for a bit different one, because if they do pull them back, I think Roglic will win the stage.
Yeah, well, you're not tipping us into too much value, mate. He's the favourite. So what do you think of?
You didn't ask me what I thought the best odds were. You asked me who I thought was going to win. So that's who I think is going to win. Okay. Sorry, mate.
What do you think about Pogacar? Do you think he's a chance? Or as Whitey said, like, Whitey doesn't seem too stressed.
No, he'll definitely be a chance. The top guys will be racing over the Pyrrhus Hood, and then it's a real fast downhill. He's pretty quick, so he's definitely a chance. And I think he'd be pretty short odds too. I think he's second favourite. Yeah, so Alaphilippe, another chance. $9.50. All those guys are definitely a chance.
Kirsty Baxter, come on, Iffy.
Yeah, come on. Now, you won yesterday, Kirsty. I don't know what you're complaining about. I've tipped you into 3 winners so far.
She said $4.50 favourite. Come on.
Sorry.
Now, breaking news, Richie Port had a baby overnight.
His wife did, yes, and
he had something to do with it, John.
Eloise,
yes,
a little girl. So he's got the matching pair now, and look, I'll tell you what, Richie is definitely a chance. He'd probably be worth a bet because he's not even on the sheet of odds, so he's got to be out of about $30. He would have a renewed sense of spark today, so I would. It'd be worth a little $10 on Richie Port.
Well, here's a question for you. It's Father's Day tomorrow in Australia. How does that change when you're a professional athlete? How does that change things when you become a father? Does it make you a little bit more hesitant on the descents, a little less fearful in the sprints, or doesn't really have much of an effect at all?
I don't think it has any effect. Most of the pros are family men. So, if you start weighing up things like that, then you might as well hang the bike up. If you're a road sprinter, you're a road sprinter. You go through those gaps. And if you're a GC rider, you got to go down those mountains quick. You got to do it. You can't start thinking about what ifs.
Now, what sort of leading can you give with David Millar? Because I remember being at the tour with you in 2005, and we did an interview with him, and he was just sitting off. I think we were doing an interview with Stewie at the time, and Dave was sitting there just chatting away, and then he had the long sleeve top on, and you asked him some throwaway, "Oh, you got the long sleeve on," and he said he was allergic to the sun.
Exactly, and it turned out that was he wasn't just having a lend to me like a lot of those guys do. So he had to wear the long sleeves because he had an allergy to the sun. I don't know. I'd be interested to have to ask him if he still suffers with that.
And we always love plugging other podcasts, and we said to people before, if you want to see the full Will Walker interview, check out your interview with him. But I was fortunate enough to do a grab on my own one, the Backstage with Dan Jones, and I interviewed Dave for an hour and a half, and it was fascinating because his story, his father was a pilot, and he actually lived in Hong Kong since he was like 13. And it was interesting how, Hong Kong's not known for, massive cycling loops. I mean, there's a couple of little hills and that, and went to a really prestigious school. But then his transition into breaking into the world tour and things like that was fascinating. And I think a lot of people don't realise, particularly with the Slipstream team that Whitey was part of at the start, Dave Millar, Jonathan Vaughters, what they did for pro cycling, particularly with things like the biological passport. And they were very transparent in that period. I think it was 2007, 2008 when they started. They basically said, well, if sponsors want to get into the sport, they have to trust that the processes are being followed. So they were the ones that really kickstarted that biological passport side of things.
Yeah, look, I'm a big fan of David Millar. He was a great cyclist. Came into the sport late, but was a superstar virtually straight away. Great time trialist. I always remember 2003 prologue for Tour de France in Paris, and I can remember Brad McGee had the quickest time, and he looked like when he just needed to wait for Millar to come in, and Millar looked like he was just going to roll him, but then he dropped his chain coming up the last corner, and he wasn't happy. I remember he changed the bike, put a single chain wheel on, and the chain came off. And he got it back on pretty quickly, but I think Bradley only beat him by 1.5 seconds or something. But so Bradley got the first yellow jersey, and David was not a happy camper.
And one of the other little side stories, because he's obviously good friends with Matt White, and they have, because the thing is with the tours, they always attract big names. Like, you saw during the Lance eras, you used to get Robin Williams, Matthew McConaughey, Ben Stiller, all these sort of guys. And in the Garmin team, they got, what's his name? I can't remember. A famous director, Nigel Dick was his name. I remember it was like a different one. But he directed all like the Britney Spears film clips. He worked with Guns N' Roses, did all their music videos, and he's a mad cycling fan. So he came and did some documentaries with the Garmin team. And some of the stories, like Millar was saying, was just fantastic. Like, he reckons that when he was doing the Guns N' Roses clip, like November Rain, he said, you know, they had a window of like 2 hours to film with the band because they would just sleep in till 3 in the arvo. And when they were there, they just didn't want to be part of it. But it's like an iconic video. And here's this guy at the Tour de France doing a little mini doc on Dave with the time trial. So
I remember one year at the Giro, they had American actor, Mr. Dr. Dreamy, or whatever his name is, from one of those sitcoms, hospital sitcoms, quite famous. And he was a real cycling nut. And they actually let him start the stage and ride to the actual start, the in control section with the riders. I've never seen that one before. Yeah.
Well, do you remember that year that Tom Cruise was at the Tour de France? And he was there on the podium, and we saw him backstage. And I remember, like, he got off and there was just like a huddle of, 20 people trying to get Tom Cruise. And Tom Cruise is tiny. Like, I think he's 5'4" or whatever. And you just saw this massive, about 50 people just moving like a swarm of bees. And I remember it's in like the media set, I'm thinking, far out, like they're going to clean up that satellite that was just sitting on the ground. And sure enough, they went through and just bumped over the satellite and just, smashed it to pieces. But they were great days back in the day with the celebrities and stuff that the tour used to get, particularly with the Armstrong era. Like, he had a fair bit of pull. He used to get all the big A-list celebrities. And Ben Still is another one. He's a mad cycling fan. When you interviewed Phil Liggett, he name dropped a few people that he'd met over the years. Iffy.
Yes, that's right. And what's his name? The great comedian who passed away. He took his
Robin Williams.
Robin Williams. He came on the tour, and I remember getting him in the VIP area, and I went up and said, "Hey, go, Rob. I'm a bit of a fan, mate." And he picked up my Aussie accent. "How are you, mate?" He said. And he started yabbering, "I love Australians." He's a good man.
Yeah. Well, if you can't tell, we're sort of treading water trying to get Dave Millar in. I think we'll give him 3 more minutes if he doesn't click in, we might have to wrap things up.
Nicole, another day.
Yeah, exactly. Nicole Wilson, Tom Cruise in Bordeaux in 2010, and so was I. So that was 2010. And Kirsty's got you again. Grey's Anatomy, Iffy. That was
that's
the show.
Him.
McDreamy.
McDreamy, that's him. Yep.
And Stuart McIntosh, David Millar's book, Racing Through the Dark, is a fantastic read. As you say, Dan, it's a great life story, definitely. Now, William Walker, he's chiming in now. Maybe Alaphilippe for tonight's stage. What do you think of Alaphilippe's chances?
Oh, he's definitely. I mean, he'll go over the top with them, and he's quick. Matter of fact,
he was stiff not to win the stage when you look at the replay, dropping his chain as well.
I don't think he was going to beat Van Aert myself. He would have been. He would have probably ran second, I reckon. But he's definitely a big chance. So there you go.
And this is a question. This is a question for me and Thomas. Wout van Aert seems to be coping well with whatever racing he's doing. Does the extra little bit of age help with this? It's been a big topic today, the age, but what's he, 25?
26, I think. Yeah. But but he's been around a long while. I mean, he's been 3 times, I think, world cyclocross champion. So he's been very experienced. It's interesting though, as Matty White was saying, Van der Poel and Van Aert both coming from the cyclocross world, and they're both dynamic and exciting, and something to do with the way they race and train that enables them to be so explosive. And I think that's something that's going to come into other forms of road cycling training because they have been so successful.
Now, one other thing people might not know about Dave Millar is his sister's Fran Millar, who is pretty much the boss of Team Ineos, Iffy.
She's top lady.
She was all about, I think she was the director of winning performance when she was at Sky. And we teamed up with them, obviously, back in 2014 for the Sky versus Orica Green Edge concept. But she's done an amazing job with that team in terms of the budgets that she can bring in, because that's a skill in itself. But the overall marketing package, you look at what they used to do year after year. It was like that off the film Batman. You know, when the Joker bashes a table, he goes, "Where does he get those wonderful toys?" Every time with the time trial, David Millar's just sent me a message, just arriving, so we will get him. They used to have those like the Batmobile for the time trial car. How much of the tour iffy is all these little added extras and the marketing side of things for teams nowadays?
Yeah, becoming more so in the last few years. I see that some of the riders have got $10,000 sunglasses on and all that sort of stuff. So it's becoming the bling is not just with our Michael Matthews. They've all got a bit of bling on them these days.
And just before Dave gets on, a few people have said to me, "Why do they call John Iffy?" Do you want to explain your nickname?
Oh, if I have time and if I could. Well, it was exactly that. It was when we were in the training camp before we went away to the Munich Olympics, and something happened in a race, and I said, "Oh, if this hadn't happened or if that hadn't happened," and Phil Sawyer said, "Bloody iffy," and it just stuck. I've been iffy ever since.
And what race was it when you were in the pool with the champagne bottle? Do you want to tell that? Come on, you might as well, mate. Dave's probably going to be 2 minutes away. Tell that story.
Tour of Mexico. We're in Puerto Vallarta, and it was Donnie Allen, Clyde, myself, Donnie Wilson. We're all the Australian team riding in Tour of Mexico. It was just after the Munich Olympics, so we'd gone from Munich back to Australia and out to Mexico, as you do. And we had this amazing hotel. We'd never been anything like that, resort hotel. And I'm laying out on the floaty out in the water with a cigar going and a stubby, and the Italian team arrived and started talking with Clyde, Donnie Allen, and all of that. And one of the Italians said, "You're a mechanic. He has a good time." And Clyde said, "That's not our mechanic. That's our Australian road champion."
Yeah, you've got a Rolodex as well of classic iffy stories over the journey. What about the other one when you won all those coins? Talk about life regrets.
Yeah. So we were at Munich, and they had these special coins at the Munich Olympics. They were 10 Deutsche Frank coin, and they were specially stamped Olympics and all of that. And we had a pre-Olympics event, and I won a few of the sprints in it, and I got a whole stack of these 10 Deutsche Mark coins. And I went into the pub for a quiet ale one day and pulled one out to buy something, and the people around the bar started fighting over the coins and offered me more money for it. I'll give you 15 for that. I should have woken up then and stopped spending them, but I spent them all, and now they're worth hundreds of Deutsche Mark each. But anyway, just another story.
And Dave's still a minute away. What other?
We're setting your records. We've been going for over an hour already, mate. This is going to set the record.
I know. But he's going to be such a good interview. Like we can't not have him on the show, and we'll have to clip up obviously the last bit with Dave Millar's grab. But one iffy story I really love, and it's probably your most famous. Tell us the story about the Giro when you got busted with a cigarette.
Yes. Well, our sports director, Florent van Vlarenberg, he was a Belgian. He was Donnie Allen's sports director a couple of years earlier at Frizzle. Anyway, he didn't like me very much anyway. He could tell that I wasn't really fit enough. I shouldn't have been there. But anyway, but I impressed him on the second day. I sprinted very well, so he was pretty happy with that. But then he came into our room one morning. I was having my morning cigarette. Well, he wasn't very happy at all. So he went and dobbed me into Gianni Savio, who was one of the team owners, who was a good friend of mine. And Gianni said, "Johnny, what are you doing?" I said, "I occasionally have one in the morning just to calm the nerves." And I said, "Okay." So he went and did a deal with Marlboro. And even back then, cigarette companies couldn't be involved in advertising in cyclo racing in Italy or France. So he did a deal with Marlboro, and I got paid $500. So I don't know what Gianni got out of it, to start the stage with a cigarette. They paid off one of the cameramen, so they had the zeroed on with the camera. As soon as they fired the gun, I butted the cigarette in the head stem, and away we went. Yeah. So
we've got David Millar on the show. David, welcome. Sorry, Johnny was just telling the story about when he started the 1980 Giro and was paid to smoke cigarettes on the start line and butt it out on the head stem.
Is that where it all began?
Yeah. How are you, mate? How's the Tour de France going for you so far?
Yeah, it's super chilled. Hey, John. Hey, Dan.
David, I'm well, mate.
Yeah, good. I mean, we got it pretty easy. We're in Kent, in Maidstone, which is about 40 km southeast of London, in the country, staying in a castle and just commuting back and forth on bikes to the studio. I'm loving it.
Well, we had Matt Keenan on earlier, and he's commentating for Aussie TV back here, and he's loving it as well. I mean, the time difference is a killer, but he said it's the first Father's Day he's been at home. Is this going to be the new normal, mate? Do you need to be at the race?
I'm loving new normal. I mean, it's different. Obviously, there's things missing in the sense you don't get the kind of the cultural ambiance or perhaps some insights. But personally, I really like this. But that's me, probably because I've done so many tours and I'm not a big fan of all the bouncing around. And you know, the tour's got so big now and just so cumbersome that it's just, and it runs later. So you don't get to the hotels till 10 o'clock at night. Restaurants are closed and it just ends up being a bit of and we always skip towns. So it's always a little bit anticlimactic. So yeah, I quite like it like this.
What's the reaction been to Adam Yates in the UK? Obviously, you know, we get bits and pieces here in Australia because of the Mitchelton Scott connection, but is he as big as Bradley Wiggins when he took the jersey, or is it different level?
I think the UK audience has got a bit complacent. You know, I mean, it's probably the least amount of GB riders we've had in the tour in years, and you know, Ineos Grenadiers aren't they're in a transition period, so they're not the dominant force we're used to. So I guess Adam Yates, maybe people are taking a bit for granted. It was a little bit unexpected, and there's also the thing, because he's on an Aussie team and the very nature of Adam, and he's not really a media dude, is he? So he's he's a racer that's indifferent to his persona and his image. He just gets it done. So I guess in that sense, it's quite relatively quiet compared to other British riders that have been in the jersey. He's the 9th British rider, so you know, and a few of those have been recently, so it's becoming quite the norm.
You got a question for Dave Iffy?
Well, just what was it like for you,
frozen.
mate?
You're right, mate.
You're right. Can you hear me, Dave? We're back.
We're back.
Yeah. So when you took the
one of us is breaking up.
When you took the yellow jersey yourself, Dave.
Hang on, I'm going to change to my 4G.
You're right, mate. Don't worry. This is the detour. We have internet problems every time, mate, and the viewers are used to that. Do you want to ask the question, Iffy? I think.
Can you hear me, Dave?
That's all right. Well, Dave's going to flick it over to 4G. See, I'm getting used to sort of navigating my way around frozen images and things like that. But yeah, I think you're going to ask him about what it was like with the jersey, yeah?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah. I'll just remove Dave and he'll flick it across. I'll say, yeah, I'll send him a message. But yeah, obviously he took the jersey very early on in his career. And in the interview when I spoke to him a couple of weeks ago, I talked to him about, you know, did that happen sort of too early in your career, and did that have sort of a negative effect? And he'll be able to obviously talk a bit more detail. But I think, yeah, here we go. He's back on.
I'm back on using 4G.
Oh, good job, mate. Go for it, John.
I was just asking, Dave, when you got the yellow jersey, how did it change your career? I mean, did you that extra publicity?
You know what? I don't think it changed my career so much. It changed my life. You know, in the sense that I went from being non-existent, and at the time, British riders we just didn't really do that. I was only the 4th British rider to do it, and I was young. I was 23 in my first tour. So I'd left Emirates at the time in the southwest of France, and I left to that Tour de France an unknown. And when I got back after the tour, everybody in the town knew me, and it was just insane. And that was probably within the tour. It was within the team and the professional life. It was almost the trajectory I was supposed to be on, and so I was prepared for that, but I totally wasn't prepared for everything else that it did to my life, because it was, and because I was on a French team, I was basically francophone living in the southwest of France. It was like, it exploded. And I didn't, that affected me probably negatively.
Well, that would have been the last success Cofidis has had. I mean, it's been a long time between drinks for them. Yeah.
You know what, though? This tour, Guillaume Martin, he's amazing. And I think he's a legit podium prospect, the way he's racing.
Yeah,
and,
sure.
and I think that, and Cedric Vasseur, who's the new boss, he's got a totally different attitude. What had held back Cofidis for so long was the fact that it was so French, and actually went Frencher than French, which was not a good thing at the time. It's okay now because they've modernized somewhat and the culture's adapted to 21st century cycling. But Cedric Vasseur's brought a real international vibe to that team and a different attitude. And the fact they've taken Guillaume Martin on last year, saying they were going to turn him into a Grand Tour racer, it seemed bonkers. It seemed a total insanity, and they were just dreaming. But he was the only one that could race and attack on that stage that Roglic won. And if you look back at the last K of that, after Sepp Kuss pulled off, just as Sepp Kuss was slowing down, that's when Guillaume Martin went. But he took it all the way to he took it all the way to the line. You know, he kind of attacked. They got on. Then he was kind of just looking over his shoulder. Guys came over the top, but then he came around and got third. And it's going to be really interesting to see how he races today. And then he saw Herrada a couple of days later up the road, finishing second on the stage. So I think Cofidis are riding that wave.
How's Martin going as a descender? Because today is all about that descent on the Peresud.
Yeah, he's all right. You know, I was thinking about that, John. It's that descent off the Peresud is not technical. There's very few. You don't break much until you get to the sharp left-hander at the bottom to the down view. So actually, and you know, even people are talking about that descent. The Peresud descent has got a terminal velocity, and you just go. And there's basically, so the gaps at the top generally stay the same to the bottom because there's no skill required. So somebody who is a bad descender will lose time. Somebody who's a good descender will gain time. But because everybody's at terminal velocity, everybody just stays the same.
Yeah.
Dave, do you think with the limited racing leading up to the tour, it's really hindered some of these GC guys that are used to being that little extra more dominant from what we've seen so far? And does that play into the hands of someone like Yatesy? I mean, Whitey's come out and said, you know, just going for stages and the jerseys are a bit of a bonus. You know what Whitey's like.
I know what Whitey's like.
What game's he trying to play here?
He's playing the right game. I mean, that's the only game you can play because that is their tactic. And it's a pragmatic tactic. And the fact they're in the yellow is a bonus. And it's a bonus that they can optimize and use to their advantage. At the moment, it actually means that he's getting to race, I guess, with less stress. He's, you know, when you're in the yellow jersey, you get treated differently in the peloton. You don't have to fight as much. You've got the right to be at the front. And we know how Adam races. He sits at the back. And you know what? There's a strong chance that if Adam hadn't been in the yellow jersey yesterday, he'd have lost time because he wouldn't have had the responsibility to be up there and the kind of the permission to be in places where otherwise he perhaps wouldn't have been. But I think, I mean, Adam, if ever there was a tour that he could win, it's this one. Let's be honest. There's no flat time trials. But I think Whitey's being honest. I don't think he's playing games because he is pragmatic, and that's the best way to handle the stress on Adam as well, because there's no point in flipping his objective during the race. And if we look back at last year, where Alaphilippe was effectively racing day by day, as that kind of cliche goes, but he legitimately was, it got him nearly to the end. And if Adam does the same, it's a great way for him to be up there. And it's not going to affect his ability to win a stage, because if Adam Yates goes and he wasn't in the yellow, people are going to chase him anyway. So I think he's actually in a really good position to win stages and actually get an unprecedented position on GC.
Yeah, I hope you're right, mate. I hope you're right.
I do too. I love Adam.
Now, if we've got the opportunity to ask that question again, because Dave's worn the yellow jersey and won stages at the Tour, what is better, a day in yellow or a stage win at the Tour de France, Dave?
Winning a stage and getting yellow is the best. But yellow it's more iconic. You know, when you're a kid and you're coming up through, you don't dream of winning a stage. You dream of wearing the yellow jersey. And so it's something that puts you in the kind of annals of history. in the sense that, we don't go back and count all the British stage winners, do we? Really, it's not quite as much for status. Yeah, and I do think within cycling, it's one of the magical things about it, in the sense that we have these iconic. We don't have trophies. We have these jerseys. If you win a stage of the Tour, until recently, you got a plastic Coca-Cola bottle. I mean, they give you a little crappy medal now, but at least if you get the jersey, it's something you can frame and put on the wall, and it becomes, and it's something that in the future. That's much more important, having a yellow jersey in your wall, than having a stage win. That's my personal opinion.
I remember one tour, 2003 prologue in Paris, and a yellow jersey that was up for grabs. And of course, we were there barracking heavily for Brad McGee, who ended up getting that first yellow jersey. But tell us a story about what happened to you, mate.
Yeah, I mean, I was going into that as out and out favourite for that prologue. It was probably the fastest ever prologue I've done. But my mechanics got way cut, because at the time we kind of forget how archaic cycling was back then, and it's only 17 years ago. In the sense, we didn't have marginal gains, we didn't have equipment. The majority of riders on a World Tour team only had one time trial bike. They didn't have a spare, and they certainly didn't have one to train on at home. And then also, the equipment was so shit. I used to buy my own equipment and get my mechanics put it on and face the wrath of my team management and sponsors. But the problem was, because I was so into that, my mechanics got into it, and they then decided to take my front mech off to really kind of streamline my bike down. They convinced me, we tried it, the front derailleur, yeah. So it meant that I had nothing holding, no protection of and I only had one chainring. It was, I mean, obviously hindsight's 2020, but when you've got your team of mechanics just super psyched and telling you it's brilliant, I was like, all right, cool. And we hit in the final K of that, coming into I can't remember what it's called, but it was cobblestones, and I was about 8 seconds up or 10 seconds up on the best time coming into the last K, and my chain bounced off. And there's actually footage of it, and I managed to get it back on while rolling along, but I almost came to a standstill as I was putting it back on, and then sprinted and still got the fastest time. And then I didn't. Bradley had gone before me, I think. So I crossed the line, and it flicked fastest time, and then it went to 2/10 of a second. Bradley beat me by, but that was legit. I mean, Bradley was amazing. The great thing with that, what people don't realize, is that because Bradley and I were such great friends, that after the tour, he came back with me to Biarritz, and we hung out in Biarritz for a week, just partying and having fun.
Yeah, good stuff.
That would have been awesome. Before we let you go, mate, I love picking the brains of these elite athletes. How did you handle pressure? And if you were Adam Yates, what would you pass on to him?
Yeah, it's weird. I think Adam's very good at it. And you know what you need is a good entourage around you to kind of calm you. And in Matt White, Adam has the best, I think, honestly, is the best in the sport. Kind of managing an elite athlete. He kind of gets inside the head, and he understands, and he's different with every rider, and he's able to read their needs and make sure creates a bubble around them. So for Adam at the moment, he's got with him in Matt White an insanely good kind of what in other sports would be a coach who will have created a bubble around him. And I think for Adam, I think he'll be okay, because Adam also, he's a cool cat. But I think for most riders, it's a case of being able to internalize things to a certain degree and know what you can control. And when things aren't in your control, you can't let that get to you. And we used to always say, like I used to say, because I was a time trial specialist, I used to never understand when I'd read interviews or hear interviews after races of people coming across the line in a time trial and saying afterwards, I wish I'd known I was only 2 seconds down. And it's bullshit, because you should finish every race being able to say to yourself that you did everything right. And actually, more than that, you should be able to start every race knowing you've done everything right up to that point. And if you can say that, if you can start the race with absolutely 100% belief that you've done everything right, then there isn't any stress. And I think Adam Yates is in that position.
How good's that? That's brilliant insight, mate.
Fantastic, mate.
Last question. Who's your tip for stage number 8? Do you reckon Roglic?
Yeah, I reckon Alaphilippe.
Ooh, nice one.
Bit of a long shot. I'm not sure if anything will happen, because it's a Balaise, which is a bastard of a climb. Pere Sword for most of those guys, it's depending on the wind, it can draft with a team as strong as Jumbo-Visma. they can kind of control it. And if that's the case, and you're looking at a non-aggressive race, you could have 10, 15 riders going over the top of Pedesod, in which case Alaphilippe likely will be there, and then no one's going to beat him in a sprint at the end of a stage like this. So Alaphilippe would be my tip. But on the other hand, if a team, I can't see what team could do it, decides to decimate it on Balaz, then we've got a completely different race. So at the top of Balaz, we're going to know. If no teams hit it and kind of gone aggressive on Balaz, then we're going to have a relatively big group coming into the finish, I think.
Good stuff, mate. Well, we're getting feedback coming in. Wow, what a captivating discussion with David from Samantha. You always deliver, mate. Really appreciate it. And hopefully we can check in later on in the tour and see how you're traveling.
Yeah, definitely. All right. See you later, John.
Good, mate.
Thanks, mate.
Take it easy. How good was that, Iffy?
Yeah, fantastic.
Awesome insights from David Millar. It's been a jam-packed show. We've gone record 1 hour 20. And so your tip is Roglic. Dave likes Alaphilippe. I'll go Pogacar. Why not? Just mix it up.
Sounds good.
All right.
One of them could be right. I like Alaphilippe too. I think he'd be a really good show. The more I think about it, he's a real good chance. Yep.
All right. Well, hopefully it's another day in yellow for the Mitchelton Scott boys. And as Dave Millar said, Yatesy's in no better hands than Matt White. So, we'll see you all again tomorrow, as we always say. If you want to support us, it's facebook.com/detourpod. And on YouTube, search the Detour Podcast. Massive show. Thanks for tuning in. And we'll see you all again at the same time tomorrow at 7:30 Australian Eastern Standard Time. Anything you want to say finally, Iffy?
Go, 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 Green Edge.